Hello, this is Lavistro, the Dragon of Cyberspace, coming to you with all news, tips, and tricks within the gaming spectrum. And it's kind of nice to hear when corporations are held accountable for their actions, regardless of that corporation. And as you guessed from the title, yes, Apple is apparently facing criminal contempt. Ars Technica reports. Fortnite will return to iOS as court slams Apple's interference and cover-up. Judge refers Apple for criminal contempt over hiding its attempt to thwart a 2021 injunction. Epic CEO and founder Tim Sweeney said in a Zoom call with press Wednesday night that the company is going to do everything we can to bring Fortnite back to the iOS Apple Store next week. That decision comes after a federal district court found late Wednesday that Apple was in willful violation of a 2021 injunction designed to allow iOS developers to steer customers to alternate payment processors for in-app purchases. That 2021 injunction wound its way through the years of appellate review until January 2024, when the Supreme Court declined to hear a final attempt by Apple to overturn it. Since then, the District Court for Northern California has been holding a series of evidentiary hearings examining the internal development of Apple's so-called compliance plan for the injunction. In a scathing Wednesday night order, District Court Judge Jovan Gonzalez-Rogers determined that Apple had engaged in a plan to thwart the injunction's goals and then engaged in an obvious cover-up to prevent that plan from being revealed. Apple's response to the initial injunction strained credulously, the judge said, by charging a new 27% commission for off-app purchases and adding new barriers such as full-page scare screens to increase friction for users seeking off-app pay alternatives. These moves demonstrate Apple's intent to continue with its anti-competitive conduct solely to maintain its revenue stream, the judge writes. More than that, Judge Gonzalez-Rogers said that Apple's in-court testimony and initial hearings on the conduct were in stark contrast to evidence that came to the court later via contemporaneous business documents. Those showed that Apple knew exactly what it was doing and at every turn chose the most anti-competitive option. The judge wrote. Apple VP of Finance Alex Roman outright lied under oath in testimony about Apple's internal deliberations, according to the court order, while CEO Tim Cook chose poorly in actively deciding not to comply with the court's injunction. Judge Gonzalez-Rogers wrote that Apple conducted in court represents a clear and convincing violation of her initial injunction that has been referred to the district attorney for Northern California to investigate whether criminal contempt proceedings are appropriate. Apple's continued attempts to interfere with competition will not be tolerated, Gonzalez-Rogers wrote. This is an injunction, not a negotiation. There are no do-overs once a party willfully disregards a court order. Time is of the essence. The court will not tolerate further delays. In the statements provided by Ars Technica, an Apple spokesman said, "We strongly disagree with the decision. We will comply with the court's order, and we will appeal." With the new court order in place, Epic says it will once again submit a version of Fortnite to the iOS App Store in the US in the next week or so. That new version will offer players the option to use standard Apple App Store payments or its own cheaper Epic Direct payment system to purchase in-game currency and items. That would mirror the system that was briefly in place for iOS players in August 2020 when Epic added alternate payment method options for iOS Fortnite and intentional violation of what were then Apple Store policies. Apple removed Fortnite from the iOS App Store hours later, setting off a legal battle that seemed finally to be reaching its conclusion. For those hours when Epic Direct payments were available on iOS Fortnite in 2020, Sweeney said that about 50% of customers deciding to give Epic a shot, going through an additional step to register and pay through an Epic account on a web page outside the app itself, and saving 20% of their purchases in the process. The other roughly 50% of customers decided to pay a higher price in exchange for the convenience of paying directly in the app through the iOS account they already had set up. Sweeney said. Consumers were making the choice, and it was a wonderful thing to see. Speaking to the press Wednesday night, Sweeney said that the new court order was a huge victory for developers looking to offer their own payment service alongside Apple's on iOS devices. This is what we've wanted all along, he said. We think this achieves the goal that we've been aiming for in the US, while there are still some challenges elsewhere in the world. While Sweeney said the specific iOS developer account Epic used to publish Fortnite in 2020 is still banned, he added the company has several other developer accounts that could be used for the new submission, including one it has used to support Unreal Engine on Apple devices. And while Sweeney allowed that Apple could still arbitrarily reject Epic from the App Store despite Epic following all the rules, he added, in light of this latest court ruling, Apple would now have to deal with various consequences of that if they did. And yes, while I do know this is about microtransactions, there are always going to be companies that have games for microtransactions, or they rely heavily on ad revenue to keep their game cheaper. And having alternatives is better than a monopoly. So it's nice to see a mega corporation being shown that it can't skirt the law. And sure, I'm pretty sure Apple will probably allegedly buy out a judge or a jury, whatever you want to call it, to get their way, to avoid criminal charges. These are corporations, after all. That's literally what they do. But it's nice to know that there's still some faith in the legal system. But what do you think, viewer? Do you think this is a good move, or do you think Apple is going to face the music? And how do you feel about having options in your payment systems? Put your thoughts in the comments below. And as always, happy gaming.
Worlds clash in endless collision. Gaming news with a fierce precision. With a spark so wild it breaks the norm. In the tempest's eye, a cyber reclaim gaming and dragon cast. Fire breathing wide, screaming loud. Lavistro's here to shake the crowd. Psychotic dragon